Welcome to the Lessons from the Leap podcast, where we showcase visionary entrepreneurs and leaders, sharing their incredible journeys and inspiring stories. Let's dive into the show.
Hello and welcome to the Lessons from the Leap. I'm your host, Gazanfer Mansour. On this show, I get to sit down with entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders to talk about bold decisions, pivotal moments, and innovative ideas that shape their journey. This episode is brought to you by Technology Rivers. At Technology Rivers, we bring innovation through AI and technology to solve real-world industry problems. We do this in two ways. First, by helping businesses streamline and automate their operations. And secondly, by partnering with startup founders, entrepreneurs, and product owners to create innovative software products, from SaaS platform to web and mobile apps. A big part of our work is health tech, where we work with health tech companies to build secure and HIPAA-compliant products. If you want to learn more about our work, head out to technologyrivers.com and tell us about your project. Today on Lessons from the Leap, we are joined by Steve Dwire. Steve serves as leadership and management coach, helping technical business leaders advance their excellence and avoid promotional remorse. Throughout his career, he discovered that many technology leaders struggle as they advance. When they become managers, they expect a change of responsibility, but they can be surprised by how much their identity must change. They are surprised again when they have managers as their direct reports. Each step brings new challenges that take a toll both on leaders and on their teams. Steve has led software engineering and IT teams in companies running a gamut from startup to Fortune 100. His combination of master's degree in software engineering, ICF approved coach training, and decades of real-world experience as an engineer and in multiple director roles makes him distinctly suited to help managers and directors of technical teams succeed as they grow in their career. Steve, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much, Gazanfer. Glad to be here.
Okay, so you talk about the promotion remorse. What is it, and when did you first see it show up in your career?
The term is really, it comes from the idea of buyer's remorse. There's so many other ideas where you think something is going to be wonderful and great, and so you go pursue it, you chase it, you buy it, you accept this promotion, only to discover this isn't what I thought it was. Now I'm expected to be, in the case of moving from an engineer into a management role, realizing that everything that made me successful as a technical expert is now getting in the way, and I have to become somebody different to be able to succeed at this new career, and I'm not sure that that's really what I want to do. So many people go back and forth, and they'll be an individual contributor, then they'll become a manager, and then they say, this isn't what I cut out for, and they want to go back to individual contributor. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't, depending on the organization they're in. And when they can't, that's the epitome of promotion remorse.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good analogy. You mentioned like the buyer's remorse, employee remorse as well. I mean, humans are all similar. It's hard to make that change. So anytime there's a change, it's always going to be. We see that in the business as well. Like you buy a product and then you start thinking, is this the right decision? You sign up for a service, it takes time to really gel, and then you're thinking for the first few weeks, is this the right decision? So yeah, people try. And I totally hear what you said, because I know, talking to some people, a friend of mine went to manager, went back to a hardcore work, and then came back, realized, because after you go back, then you realize, oh, really the other one was a better deal. So it's really, you have to work on it. You have to change it.
And what's interesting is that even remaining an individual contributor, when you move back from manager to individual contributor, moving along even the technical track many of the same internal changes that it takes to be a good manager, not all of them, but many of them are also important for becoming advanced along the technical track in leadership. The whole idea of building relationships, understanding conflicting ideas, and being able to know when it's your turn to play referee or when it's your turn just to disagree and commit. All of those things, whether it's management or technical track, similar things.
Yeah. And then you have mentioned that becoming a manager of managers is a whole new league.
Mm.
So can you break down that?
A few of the big things. When you are a manager of individual contributors, that's really the first time that you become responsible for representing the business, speaking on behalf of the business to your team members, and then also in reverse, representing your team members back to the business. But then once you become a manager of managers, now the people that you're leading are now responsible for speaking on behalf of the business. So your role then in how, to what degree, to what, with what intensity of authority do you speak to those at the level below you becomes different. There are many more things now that you have to release control over and allow those leaders who are below you to actually do some leading, to do some managing. I remember something that my boss said to me once when I was trying to apply the frontline manager mentality when managing managers. I was still trying to oversee and make sure that every single project within my entire scope, every project was going to be successful. And he told me, Steve, you have to be willing to let your direct reports fail, because that's the only way that they are going to grow and be able to succeed in general. And that was something that was very hard for me to let go of and to learn that lesson.
I think that's hard for everybody. It's like letting your direct report fail because that would come onto you, or a fear of not achieving goals, whatever are those different goals. So we human would like to be perfect, and we do see these problems in our business as well. Some of them with myself, which probably comes managing managers, and then people moving up as a technical company. Obviously, the developers becoming leads becoming directors, managers, and then you have to go through this whole process of the struggle because there's a total different expectation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So moving from architecting systems to mentoring people, it's a big shift. And how do you navigate that transition for yourself? Because again, me even coming myself, I can see that it's not an easy change. So, and based on our conversation, it seems like this is the area you like most now. So tech, it's hard for tech people to leave the tech part.
And I didn't even go with the direct path. I thought when I left my job in 2021. I had been a director. I had kind of scaled back a little bit, went part-time, and then finally left in 2021. But I thought at that time that my next step was to be running a software as a service business that I had started back in 2013. I had built a few things, dabbled in trying to find the market that I had the market I wanted to serve, dabbled in what product it was going to be, but then the day job just took way too much of my attention. So I left in 21 to focus full time on that. Deep technical. I spent hours upon hours upon hours, days, months in the weeds technically, and realized eventually that I was trying to solve a problem that my target market didn't really care about. And that's when I hired a coach to help me figure out, what am I going to do with this? Because this software as a service, it's not failing technically, it's failing businessly. The market, all of the non-technical things are where it's failing. And through the conversation that I had with my coach, one of the things I discovered about myself is that I really didn't miss writing software anymore. I really didn't miss trying to make all of the computers stay running. And that's part of, I think, where there may have been a little bit of self-sabotage in the back. If this succeeds, I'm going to be stuck writing code and monitoring computers for forever. But through that conversation, I realized that what I missed most about being in the corporate world was precisely having those one-to-one conversations with my direct reports, seeing them grow and change and get promoted. And I realized through that conversation, I just hired this guy to spend the next year having one-to-one conversations with me. This is a profession. This is how I want to spend the next chapter in my life. So I ended up closing down the software as a service business, helped all the clients migrate onto other free systems that were serving them better than I could, and went to get my professional coach training. And that was a little over 3 years ago. That's been my full-time focus ever since then. And I can't imagine doing anything else.
Cool. Yeah, hiring a coach was also one of my biggest lessons, my journey from doing a consulting to a startup to this business, because the mistakes I was making, I just thought, oh, I'm doing the right. Like engineers have this natural tendency, oh, they want to build those strong, scalable systems, not focusing on the customers. So you want to work with people who have done it before, who can help you, who can show you the path. Many times even if no matter how smart we are, it's not easy to see your own path. And you need that for accountability as well.
One of the things I love about the name of your podcast, it's Lessons from the Leap. We've talked about multiple leaps that we've made. And my first leap off into the software as a service business, it was, misguided, I would say, because I didn't have that input, or I wasn't willing to listen to the guidance that I saw all around me that, well, I'm special, I'm different, I can make this work, even though all the rest of the people say that this isn't the right way to do things. And yes, I would say I learned some lessons from that leap also, that good advice is good advice for a reason.
Yep. And looking back, we realized those were the mistake. When we were making those mistakes, we don't realize that, as Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking back. You can't connect the dot looking forward. And that's the same experience that I got and you got. Okay, so many leaders describe challenges like burnout, lack of recognition, imposter feelings, and you have coached many of the people through these. Which of these challenges do you think is the most common among today's tech leaders?
Well, I think things change, and I think I would say this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but I think they are all common and they take their turns. I think everybody experiences each of them to some degree. I also think it depends, that old cop-out answer, it depends on the specific environment. But you'd mentioned burnout, imposter syndrome. What was the other one that you'd mentioned?
Lack of recognition.
Yes, lack of recognition. Rather than selecting one of them as most common, I would say part of the biggest challenge with all of them is coming to terms with one's own sense of identity. I think the challenge for all three of those is really rooted in a lack of clarity around who am I and what makes me valuable here. Burnout comes when nothing I do is ever going to be good enough. Lack of recognition fuels into that when especially when you're moving from manager to manager of managers. The obvious work is being done by the frontline individual contributors. That's what gets metriced. That's where all of especially in software engineering, you know, they're the ones with the pull requests. They're the ones with the code reviews. They're the ones who are producing things and writing code and making products and promoting to production. As managers, and especially as managers of managers, we don't have the metrics that say, look, I'm doing a good job. And so we try to find anything that will make us feel like we're doing a good job. So we work harder, we stay later, we have more conversations, we fight harder. And all of that leads to burnout. It leads to the feeling of the lack of recognition, and it leads to that feeling of imposter syndrome, saying, I know I have a seat at the table, but I feel like I don't belong here. And then we live that out by saying, because I don't feel like I belong here, I'm going to act like I don't belong here. I'm going to keep my mouth shut, just try not to make waves, because I'm afraid that I won't actually have a place at the table if I speak up. So underlying all of that is just a sense of personal identity.
Okay. And how do you help people shift from I need to be the smartest in the room to I need to build a team that thrives?
It really starts with just a conversation with that person to understand what is really driving what's underneath them. For some of them, it is fear. Some of it is baggage from a previous situation where they were mocked for their ideas. It could be any of a number of things. But for many, it's just that fear of having their ideas shot down. Fear of, if I speak up, I'm going to look like the oddball. I'm just going to go along with what everybody else is doing. And really, the big thing that I work with some people on when they have that is to help them to recognize the disservice that they're doing for their employer, for their company, for their team, when they keep their ideas bottled up. They've been brought to the table for a reason. They've been hired into this position or promoted into this position for a reason. And when they allow their fear, when they allow their imposter syndrome, their conditional work based on what kind of recognition they're going to get, when they let that get in the way, then they are personally choosing to withhold the very value that they've been called to bring. And so it can help them. Well, we'll just talk through what is an example, what is a value, when is the next opportunity you're going to get, what are some of the things that you're thinking through, what are the ideas that you have and haven't shared, when's your next opportunity, when will you commit to sharing that, those kinds of conversations.
Okay. Is there any book that you can recommend, or obviously coaching in person is one, but a lot of people would like to learn also from other sources. So any recommendation?
There's a classic one that's regularly recommended, and I'll recommend it as well. It's The Manager's Path. When we think about all of the different stages, I tend to divide things into 4 stages: individual contributor, manager, manager of managers, and then senior leadership. Just kind of 4 big, broad. But what's the name? Camille. I'm looking for the book. Here it is. Yeah. Camille Fournier. I don't know if I'm butchering her name, but that one, you can see all the little tabs. Just lots of great things in here, lots of great insights, and at a more granular level, and lots of different individual advancements. Another one is called Leadership Passages. And this is not just software engineers or engineering, but various senior leadership roles included, and lots more tabs, lots more insights from that book. but just a lot of great opportunities to look at just personal leadership growth moments, including things like recognizing that you regret making an upward move and you want to take a step back. That is a leadership passage, and it's covered in that book. So those would be two.
Oh, cool. There's another good book, not on this topic, but as you use the word regret. So The Power of Regret. I forgot who is, I think Daniel Neal maybe, but yeah. So probably we'll add that in the notes, that book, or maybe Daniel Pink.
Yeah, Daniel Pink. Yeah, I'll have to go look that one up. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Can you share a transformation story? Someone you work with who made a breakthrough.
The scenario I was describing earlier is probably a common one, and so one person in particular, they were in a director role, and they were finding themselves at the table in the meetings, having some qualms about decisions that people were making, but they had this identity of the other people are the experts. I'm just here to make sure that the work stays scheduled. Even though they had a history and a growth path through engineering. But we had the conversation, and we're talking about what is it that they personally value. So we went through a values exercise that I make available for them to recognize these are the things that are important to me. This is how I find my own motivation. And then through those values, we're able to determine a strategy. Next time this event happens, they had an offsite that was happening, and he could feel already there was some angst about even having conversations. When you get in that room with all those people, the intimidation is there. I'll just wait for people to come talk to me. And he was able to take that step, go out, make those relationships. And what was particularly interesting about this particular story was that rather than this person having come to me looking for coaching, this was one of those events where it was sponsored by the employer. And so the one who was sponsoring, actually, we had a conversation partway through where I just asked, hey, what have you noticed? Because when I'm coaching, even if the company is paying for it, we don't talk to the company about what's happening in the coaching sessions. Those remain confidential, private. So even though we had never talked about what we had been working on, when I talked to the sponsor and asked, what have you noticed? He was able to articulate, well, I've noticed that he's speaking up more in meetings. I've noticed that he's doing much better with building relationships. He outlined the very things that we had been working through. And later, when I had a conversation years after, he had mentioned that when the sponsor, when he left the company, brought somebody else back in, somebody new to be a leader, that leader observed about the person I had coached. This guy's really good. We should be giving him more responsibilities. So he had been able to overcome those things that had gotten in the way of being effective at the director level.
Oh, cool. So how can founders or CTOs or leaders who are listening know when someone on their team might need the kind of support you offer? What are the signs?
Well, one of those signs would be that holding back. They look like they have something to say, but they're not saying it, or just disengaged in the meetings. Often really just the fact that they are new, especially moving from individual contributor into a manager role. Yes, there is a role for management training, and some companies don't even offer that. But I have yet to experience a engineer moved to management who will succeed easily without somebody to be able to talk to about, this is what I'm experiencing. These are the challenges. I would say just about any engineer turned manager would benefit from a coach. Some senior leaders and some directors are capable of giving that coaching, but most of them merely believe that they are. But if they haven't experienced that kind of professional level coaching from somebody, they won't necessarily know what they're missing. I would say that for somebody who's really looking to see how well they do at coaching, Michael Bungay Stainier's book, The Coaching Habit, is a really good surface level description of what coaching looks like. The professional coach training takes it to a whole new level, and especially in an organization where there may be a little bit of not quite psychological safety, where it's not safe to speak up and voice the challenges that one's facing. An external coach is immensely helpful because it gives them the permission, the perceived permission, the recognized permission to say what they're actually struggling with.
Oh, good. And have you seen any differences where the organizations who have a flat hierarchy versus the traditional hierarchy?
The biggest challenge that I see in a super flat hierarchy is the level of one-to-one engagement between the managers and the direct reports. I suspect, and I don't have data around this, but I suspect that the startup environments that are most prone to flat hierarchy, the flat organizations, also happen to be the ones that attract the kinds of engineers that are more interested in just leave me alone, let me do my work, I'll get it done. I don't really care about the one-to-ones. I don't care about the relationships. But once they grow, that's where the challenge comes. And now you can't grow the company beyond a certain point and maintain that kind of flatness. And so it's really the growth of the company. Once you need enough people doing that engineering work, there's going to come a point where people are going to start feeling left out. The psychological safety is going to start to degrade. You're going to see the consequences of the weak relationships. That's when you know it's time to unflatten. There's a phrase I like to use. When people are unflattening their organization, they're going to introduce that level of frontline management. And very often that's when you need to invest in the coach to help those, especially when you're doing many at once, help them to succeed, because that is the leap in organizational structure now that definitely can benefit from lessons that others have learned.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to change the topic. I know when I was talking to you last time, we were talking about scheduling an appointment, and you said one thing that so you talked about shifting from asking for a time to offering it. What mindset shift made that possible for you? And also, can you elaborate that with example for our audience?
Sure.
That's a good information to have.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that conversation. So thank you for bringing that up. And again, this is an example of how a coach can help, because just like doctors have doctors and barbers have barbers, coaches have coaches. So this was part of a conversation with my coach. My approach to building conversation had been, I would reach out, I would notice people who introduced themselves in a community that I'm a part of. If they shared their LinkedIn profile, then I would reach out and say, I saw that you shared your LinkedIn profile in such and such community. We're glad you're here. Welcome. And then only if they would say something that would indicate, hey, I think I might need a coach, only then would I bother to take the time to ask them for 30 minutes of their time. Hey, I would love to have a virtual coffee with you, for example. When I talked to my coach, we were digging through what's the reason for that. And what I realized was I was seeing people as prospects. And so the conversation was for my benefit. So I was asking them for their time to serve me. And he pointed out, Steve, when you have conversations with people, you can help them no matter what situation they're in. You can offer your time. They don't have to be prospects. What would it look like if you could view as offering your time instead of requesting theirs? And from that, I have had so many interesting conversations since I've made that shift. And rather than saying, I would love to have 30 minutes of your time, I would just say, hey, if you would ever like to have virtual coffee so we can get to know each other, strengthen our professional relationships, see how we can support and encourage each other, just let me know. And so many times people will respond with, what a generous offer. They use the word offer in their recognition of what happened in that context. And so many conversations, people saying, this was such a valuable conversation. You made me think. And that's exactly the kind of conversation that I had missed having left the corporate world. Now I get to do it all the time. And switching from request to offer just gave me that many more opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great insight. So it's like saying, hey, here's my friend who's looking for a work if anybody has an opportunity, versus, hey, I know this amazing person who have some availability and he's not gonna be available soon. So I'm happy to connect you with that. And suddenly you have so many responses. People say, okay, I want to talk to this guy because now you're offering their help rather than they are looking. So that's a human nature. When somebody asks, there's a pushback. Cool.
Absolutely. And that's the power of that, just a tiny little insight, a tiny little shift of perspective. And it's the same kinds of little tiny shifts in perspective that each engineer turned manager, each manager turned director has their own collection of little shifts that will make the difference in their success.
Cool. So we've been talking with Steve Dwire. Steve, thanks for sharing those insights. Where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
The two key places would be LinkedIn, just Steve Dwire, Dwire on LinkedIn. And I post a video every Tuesday and Thursday with some management tip addressing one of those 4 tiers of leadership that I mentioned earlier. And you can also visit northwayinsights.com. And if you go to the musings page, you'll see those same videos if you would prefer to get them in your inbox.
Oh, awesome. Finally, what's the next leap that you are more excited about?
This is a leap. I would say I'm probably mid-leap at the moment. And while I am committed to continuing with the same process that I have for continuing with the coaching, over the past week or so, I have also committed more of my attention in my free time to a science fiction novel that my son and I are writing together. So I've been diving a lot deeper into the craft of fiction writing. So that's maybe it's a half leap because I'm still keeping a foot in the coaching.
It's one of those multiple leaps that we talked earlier. So
leap upon leap, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, it was great to have you. Thanks for listening to Lessons from the Leap. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lessons from the Leap podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll catch you next time.